Howdy gamer, let's talk about the runes for Morgana. Coming into Season 10, Morgana is going to be like one of the top tier supports. I think Senna, Zyra pretty high up there, Xerath pretty high up there for solo queue supports, but Morgana is in an interesting position in which she's so high tier because she can function as a damage support as well, but then she also negates almost every single other support because of her black shield. She negates all in supports and she kind of negates enchanters because she can block their damage and their CC and then also have an all in advantage with her Q. But then the trade off is that she's harder to play and she's less durable, but still a really like fantastic support champion. And if they make like any small buffs to her, she's going to be even more ridiculous. So there's two primary keystones. In this video, I'm assuming that you have a pretty good understanding of Morgana and then a base understanding of the support role. So the two major keystones for Morgana in the support role is going to be Arcane Comment and then Guardian. Going into both trees have pretty obvious results, with Guardian giving you more protection for your ally and then Arcane Comment giving you more damage. So let's start off with Arcane Comment. The reason you would run Arcane Comment instead of Airy is that Morgana's W is on a fairly short cooldown if you land it properly. If the enemy continues to stand on it, then it reduces the cooldown of her W pretty significantly. And then with Arcane Comment, once you land an ability on the enemy, it will drop an Arcane Comment, and then every single ability that lands after that reduces the cooldown of Arcane Comment. So let's say if you land a Q and then you W, your W, by the time your next W is up, you probably have another Arcane Comment, especially the later the game goes. Not even that late into the game. Like once you're level 6, a Q, W, ult, W is going to give you 2 Arcane Comment procs. Easily. That, and then you're going to be dealing more damage because the comments are actually going to be landing. So that's like why you would run this over Airy. Also with Morgana, you have like a one-time shield. You do have a shield, right? But it's not like a Janna shield where you're going to get 2 off in a team fight. It's not like a Soraka heal that's going to be happening every maybe 3 seconds. You have one shield. So having extra shielding power doesn't translate as much come mid-game because the Airy shield is like kind of small compared to Guardian because it's like balanced around being procced multiple times. That and then the damage on Airy is also lower than it would be with Arcane Comment, especially since you should be landing the Arcane Comments because of Morgana's Q ult or even just positioning the W. So that's that. That's why you see Arcane Comment versus Airy. It does seem kind of odd, but especially with Morgana, it actually works out versus not. It's not like something like Janna where you have a huge trade-off of getting like a little bit of extra damage early and then losing out on a ton of shielding later. For Morgana, you have a ton of extra damage early, and then you continue to have this extra damage come like 25 minutes. Then it starts to fall off versus having extra shielding from either Airy or Guardian. So that's that. In the next row, Mana Flow Ban is going to be the pretty obvious option. Whenever you damage a champion with an ability, then you're going to get increased maximum mana up to 250. So this is basically a ruby or a sapphire crystal for free. And then once you reach this once you reach the maximum amount of mana gained from Mana Flow, then you also restore mana over time. So you build this up so quickly throughout the laning phase by spamming W, and then if you're still in a laning phase, let's say if it's like an extended laning phase up until like 14 minutes, being able to just spam W without having to care about the mana cost is pretty good, as you're going to be able to generate gold more and then also just not run out of mana and build up more damage on the enemy. So that's nice. Nullifying Orb isn't a bad option. Having to trade off the mana, it feels bad, but it's not terrible, right? Nullifying Orb is a good option into AP bot lanes such as Vigar, Syndra, if the enemy has a Karthus jungle, because you're going to be black shielding your AD. So having a little bit of defense for yourself if the enemy like decides to turn on to you is pretty good. All you have to do is manage casting your abilities in a different way from not having Mana Flow Ban, which that comes from experience, but it's something to try out if you're into those matchups. And then Nimbus Cloak is kind of interesting, but not really, because with Morgana, you're usually hitting a binding and then following up on it with your ult. So having extra movement speed from, let's say, igniting an enemy isn't so useful versus other champions that use this like junglers. That, and it gives you more movement speed, so it's only effective as an offensive tool, which Morgana just doesn't need. Your binding lasts so long anyways. So there might be matchups in which like the champions could actually get away, in which it might be like an adaptation rune, but it's pretty fringe in that sense. In the next tree, the good options you have is Transcendence and Absolute Focus. I think Transcendence is the better option, as with Absolute Focus, when you're above 70% HP, you get more AP. But with Morgana, Morgana support especially, it's kind of your job to like land your abilities and then tank some damage. Having the extra AP isn't really that necessary. Versus having the extra 10% CDR come mid game will just give you more bindings and more black shields throughout a team fight. And so long that like you can get to this point pretty consistently in games, without the game just being over, then you're going to get more value out of Transcendence. If you're newer to the game or newer to the support role, or I guess just want a little bit of extra power but doesn't really even give you that, you could run Absolute Focus instead, but I recommend Transcendence. And then in the third row, you have the good options of Scorch or Gathering Storm. Since you're already running Arcane Comment, which is a damage rune in itself, I think Scorch is fine, because when you're running this rune page with Morgana, it basically means like you're trying to damage the enemy to provide value for your ally early. So you're still functioning like most enchanters do, dealing damage early and then transitioning into a supportive role later. And Arcane Comment and Scorch help you do that. If you were to be playing like a more defensive role, then it would make more sense just to run the Guardian page and then maybe run Absolute and Gathering Storm with that, or even Mana Flow and Gathering Storm. So with Gathering Storm, you would have to wait till about 20 minutes till you'd really get value out of it, as it would give you about an Amp Tome, which is good on Morgana, but in most solo queue games, like the Scorch is just going to give you more definite value, especially if you're running a rune page such as this. And then for secondary runes, you have a couple of interesting options. You could run like Taste of Blood Ghost Poro, you could run Revitalize Bone Plating, Revitalize Unflinching, you could run Overgrowth Second Wind, you could run, the most common is Stopwatch and Biscuits, and this is what I'm going to recommend with this page too, because with Biscuits they give you more mana throughout the laning phase, and then if you don't end up using them, then you can sell them, and then it gives you a little bit of extra gold, and then also gives you the increased maximum mana as well. So this in combination with Mana Flow Ban means that you can just spam max range bindings and W's without having to worry about the mana cap. And then with Perfect Timing, it's going to give you the one-time stopwatch, so helps you with an all-in in the bot lane, it helps you with the dragon fight, and then if you're winning the game, then it helps you itemize into Zhonya's faster. And that's usually how you end up carrying with Morgana, is just getting a Zhonya's fast as support come mid game, and then you have the completed support item, which gives you a ton of AP too. So with those two items, like if you just land a binding, then it's pretty much done for someone come mid game. But the defensive options with, let's say, something like this and this doesn't really line up that well with running the offensive runes early. You could kind of I guess value these runes to like buy you time to make value out of conditioning and revitalize. But with Morgana, like if you're not buying support items that actually heal, then you're losing a lot of value out of revitalize, because it would only be for the self healing, which is fine. But again, if you're running the primary page with Arcane Comment, I don't really see it. So this is what I'm going to be recommending for most players. And then for runes, it's pretty basic: Adaptive Force, Armor. If you're playing into enchanters, feel free to go Armor, Magic Resist. Having the extra stats from this is just more valuable than having the extra AP early, because supports are just generally weaker early, and having just this base Magic Resist whenever you're playing into champions like Janna, Sona, Lulu, Karma, any support champion that can deal magic damage to you, just the Magic Resist plus the armor to negate damage from minions, the enemy support's auto attacks, and the enemy AD is just really good for Morgana. It makes her so much more durable versus having a little bit more AP. But if you're into, let's say if you're into melee matchups, Thresh, Nautilus, Leona, you just don't need those. So you could, because you're either going to be backline or going to be negating their CC anyways with the Black Shield. But you could just defaultly run it like this. It'd be the simplest. So this is the default page I recommend for Morgana coming into Season 10. Gives you it. gives you like pretty linear offense, and then later into the game you transition into a supportive role, and then it all kind of makes sense. Like win game early, support later, basically. So yeah, and then with this page, like a basic build would be Spell Thieves, Boots of Lucidity, Zanya's, Shirelia's, whatever, Redemption, Locket, you pick, last item. Be pretty basic. So yeah, that's the runes I recommend. If you have any questions about these, leave them in the comments. I answer literally every single question. And then if you're interested in support gameplay, you can check out my Twitch channel. It's twitch.tv/SawyerNelson. I'll be playing once Season 10 starts. So now let's talk about the Guardian page. I think this page is way more advanced, and you have to like actually know how to play Morgana to a high degree to like get good value out of it, versus like just knowing how to beat the enemy with Arcane Comment through constantly just spamming spells. So starting off with the Keystone, it's going to be Guardian. Whenever the interesting thing with Guardian 2 with Morgana's Black Shield is with Morgana's support, your Black Shield is gated to a sense because it only blocks so much magic damage once you max it, and you're usually maxing it first. So once a tank support scales, or if you're playing into control mages like Syndra or Orianna, they can just straight up break your Black Shield with like one or two abilities, especially with Ludens. So having something like Guardian means that they have to break the Guardian Shield before they can even break the Black Shield. And then once they, because if they have to break both, then your ally can most importantly avoid CC for longer, but then also you can just block more damage for them. So that's where Guardian gets a ton of value. And playing into champions like Leona, Nautilus, etc., you don't even have to run Arcane Comment because damaging them isn't really that important. You can use it to win lane, sure, but if they're just playing back properly, then you're not going to get the opportunity to actually build up damage. That, and then basically if they're just playing better, then they can negate your advantage of running Arcane Comment entirely. So if they do that, then you have the option to run Guardian, and then you're going to be negating their all-in anytime they think they have it. So it's like they're playing a game, the tank supports are playing a game in which they know that you beat them in the laning phase, so they can seed the laning phase and then beat you in scaling come mid and late game. But then if you run Guardian, you're matching their scaling come mid and late game. That's the easiest way I could put this. And then with Guardian, it's on a pretty substantial cooldown early, but then gets lower the later the game goes on, the more levels you have. So in the early game, usually tank supports have like one opportunity to engage, so it's not like you're blocking it every single minute. So that, and then they also have to play around Black Shield cooldown. The shield value is also based on a percentage of your AP and then a percentage of your bonus health, so that's nice. If you're building items like Ardent, Redemption, Athenes, etc., it increases the shield amount, which is cool. And then it also gives you and your AD bonus movement speed. So even if they do get on top of you or your AD, you're gonna give them a magic damage shield, a shield that blocks all damage, movement speed. Yeah. So any champion that's on top of them, it's pretty likely that they get away. Next rune I'm gonna recommend is Font of Life. Like Demolish lost a good amount of value since they reduced the gold that you get from turret plates, so I don't see a good amount of value in that. And then Shield Bash damage is like a joke, and it's just so unnecessary because you're running this page into tanks anyways. Like dealing 5 extra damage to a tank, whatever, man. With Font of Life, whenever you impair the movement of an enemy, you mark them, and then if an ally champion hits them, then they heal for a little bit. This isn't like wildly useful on Morgana, but it is nice where when you land a binding or if you ult a target, then that person's going to be marked, and then your ally can heal a bit more. So it has the synergy with like you're protecting your carry, and then you provide value to them. And if you're running Ardent Censer or Athenes, then it can proc off this. So that's pretty nice, as you don't have to just have all the value in the Black Shield to be able to like get extra value out of the enchanter items. And then for the third rune, it's going to be Conditioning. If you're running into, or if you're playing into enchanter supports, Second Wind is good, and then Bone Plating is okay. But Morgana's role, whenever you're playing against melee supports, is to like play the backline. You don't have to be in their face, so being able to block extra damage for yourself isn't entirely useful. And then again, you're trying to like match their scaling come mid and late game, because they're usually playing a game where they've locked. We've already went over it. Anyways, after 10 minutes, you gain 9 armor, 9 magic resist, and then increase your armor and magic resist by 5%. So you buy something like Locket, this is going to get more value, but more importantly, it just puts you at a tankier position where even if they get on top of you, it's going to take them longer to kill you. And the longer it takes the enemy to kill a support, the more value they give to their entire team. So that's interesting. So yeah, fourth row, your good options are Overgrowth and Revitalize. If you're already running Guardian Font of Life and then playing into melees where you're probably going to be itemizing the enchanter items, might as well go Revitalize. Heals and shields you cast or receive are 5% stronger and increase by an additional 10% on targets below 40% health. So this makes Redemption stronger, it makes Black Shield stronger, it makes Guardian stronger, it makes Font of Life stronger, it makes Athene stronger, it makes Ardent stronger. So anything that's going to heal or shield your ally, it's just going to make that stronger, versus having a little bit more HP with Overgrowth. Because if you're not a tank support, you do lose a bit of value with this. And then for secondary runes, you have okay options. You could go Free Boots Biscuits. You could even go Presence of Mind Tenacity. That'd be kind of fringe though. If the enemy has that much CC, maybe. Let's say they're playing 3 tanks, Alistar, Ornn, Zac or something. Maybe you would run something like this. But I think the most common one would be like Mana Flow Transcendence or Mana Flow Gathering Storm. As again, you're just matching their scaling. You're just matching tank support scaling mid game, and then come late game, you're beating them completely. So this is a pretty good. You could even run scaling health in the runes too, because just scaling, like this page would give you as much scaling as possible. If you wanted something like easier or more defensive, I suppose you could run like this and this, or maybe this and this, because with free boots, it would make it so that it would offset the cost of your first completed item. It would make it so that you couldn't purchase boots in the laning phase, but then your first item would be completed faster. And then maybe that's more important. Maybe completing Athene's first is more important, or completing Redemption, Shirelia's, etc. is more important than having the extra mana and then the extra AP later in the game. So you could weigh those two values, but this would be the default I recommend. So that's the two like most prominent pages on Morgana, and basically like when and why you would run them. Again, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I answer literally every single question. If this video helped, leaving a like helps me. So hope it helped. That's it. See you in season 10. Bye bye. See ya. Thanks for watching. Bye bye. See ya later.